everyone. It is June 20th. This is week 3 for Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And I'm on Epic Consulting platform talking about Therapy Thursdays. And this is our weekly conversation about all things that have to do with the conversations we don't want to have in public. And this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. So I wanted to keep that Therapy Thursday conversations going. Today, we have 2 staff members coming on from the Henrietta Wild Memorial Child Guidance Clinic out of Bakersfield, and they're going to share their interest in this topic, how long they've been here working at the clinic, and then a little bit about themselves before we jump into my questions. Okay, so here's Julian and Marvin. Thank you for joining me. It's always a pleasure to have new people on and to experience this with me. And I know that it's going to be a great conversation. This is a hard topic, I think, to discuss in public anyway, but it's good to have different perspectives. So, Marvin, can you start us off with an introduction, please?
Sure. So my name is Marvin. I work at the Child Guidance here in North Bakersfield in Oildale. I actually am a recent new hire. Just took on the position of an associate marriage family therapist, since I am also a recent graduate of the MFT program from Cal State Bakersfield. So I only have about a couple weeks, maybe about a month working here so far.
Julian?
Oh, my turn. Okay. Well, my name is Julian Love. I'm an intervention specialist 3. I've been with the clinic coming up this October will be 18 years that I've been here. I've been here for quite some time. I really enjoy working for the clinic. I think that it has a very good purpose. And so, yeah, I really enjoy being here for sure.
Okay, so now I'm going to bring you back to the topic, and each of you can answer this. It doesn't matter who goes first, but why did you say yes to this week's topic? I know we tried to get you on a couple of times. It just didn't work out. But this Man Enough conversation, can you share a little bit about why this was a good conversation that you felt like you could handle, that you wanted to participate in? Marvin.
Okay. So full transparency, I'm more comfortable with talking about manlyhood over fatherhood. I have minimal experience as a father. At least I feel like I do. So I don't feel as competent to be able to enlighten others in fatherhood as much as I can with manlyhood.
Okay. So that's why this week versus last week when we were talking about fatherhood.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Julian?
Well, the reason why there's a lot of interest with Man Enough. I think that we have a lot of different perspectives of what people think of what Man Enough is, right? And I think sometimes we have to break the stereotype of what I think society norms are and what they think is man enough. So I think that maybe just kind of giving a little bit of input on maybe my perspective or just kind of seeing a different view of what man enough might mean for sure.
Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be interesting too to see coming out of the clinic, like who your clients are, who those families are, because well, I'll jump into the first thing I'm going to ask is in terms of how we're defining man enough. Obviously, I'm not, and I forgot to say this in the intro, but I'm not like the expert in this mental health awareness period, but men's mental health awareness, it's just a topic that comes up in June that happens to be after May Mental Health Awareness Month. And people wanted to keep having the conversations. And even though I'm obviously not the person, but I like having the conversations. I like moderating these conversations. And the platform is here and Thursdays are here. So I like to facilitate that. So I'm going to ask you each to tell me what you think, what might be like a working definition for you when you think about the phrase man enough. And this time I'm going to have Julian go first.
Oh, you're going to have me go first.
Marvin's like, don't make me go first.
Okay, so man enough, just kind of looking at both of the questions, the next question that kind of comes up would be what was that definition like growing up,
Yeah.
right? And so just to kind of share, I think that that's kind of what gives me the perspective of what my definition of what man enough is, right? So growing up, I kind of grew up in a home where I didn't have a father figure in the home, and so I did grow up with a mother who was single and just kind of struggling through life. And I think that she had a difficult time just kind of managing her own emotions. And so I think that ideally growing up, the definition or what was instilled in me was more of you can't be scared, you can't cry, you got to be tough. If you want to survive in the world, this is what is being defined as being man enough. And I think that it kind of made me very narrow minded because you had to be tough. You didn't take any lip from anybody. So I got into a lot of fights. Um, just kind of growing up was, it was getting into a lot of trouble being in juvenile hall because of it. Got to the point where even my mindset was, I'm going to hurt them before they hurt me because that's what was instilled, right? You have to be tough. Anywhere you went, anywhere, anybody that you talk to, you have to be tough, and it's going to be a dog eat dog world is what it was, right? And so growing up after that definition, I had to rearrange what my mentality was, because then I saw my mother serve a prison sentence. My
Mhm.
father kind of walked away because he was addicted to heroin, and I ended up in the system. So I ended up in juvenile hall. I ended up in a group home. I ended up in foster care. By the time I turned 18, I was out on the street, right? So then to myself, I was like, am I not man enough? Like where am I going to go from here? And so I really had to change that perspective and that mentality to be where I'm at today, right? And so my definition of what man enough, it's not about being tough, and um it's not about not allowing your emotions to get the best of you, right? It's one of the things that I've learned over the years is being resilient is what makes you tough enough. Being able to surpass those challenging moments in life, and being able to overcome um, a lot of the trauma, or maybe a lot of the stigma of what mental health is. And I think that that's kind of what makes us, man enough, being able to be that anchor, in our families, and being able to be pillars, right? And being able to just break away from this destructive path and moving into a more productive uh, life way of style, for sure.
Mhm. Okay.
Sorry if
Thank
I
you.
rambled off, but that's
No, no, this I mean,
definition.
this is how these conversations get going, because we know that there's going to be, even our thought processes as you're weaving all of this stuff together, it's not going to be black and white, right? It's going to be like based on everyone's personal experiences, how it's evolving. And
Mhm.
sometimes, I mean, this happens to me. I don't know if this is this happens to me while I'm talking. Sometimes it's like, you know what? Maybe that's not exactly what I meant. Maybe there's this other
Yeah.
part that I want to add. So it's perfectly fine. Okay, Marvin.
Well, currently as a almost middle-aged man and a therapist, I still find it difficult to have a solid definition of what man enough is.
Mm,
Um, I would say my official answer would be it's simply subjective. There's so many variations of what a man is, and those variations are based on culture, religion, socialization, generation, and overall life experiences. And these definitions can, I think there's just more components of a man that can define it. Sort of like being a provider, defender, protector, a father, a worker. Not to mention the phenotypes, such as stature and even body hair. Um, but ultimately, it's still just very subjective to the user. So now I don't have an official definition to what a man is. It's just it's too subjective to just give it one simple answer. It's
That's
ever evolving and ever changing.
that's perfect, because part of my reason for just using that phrase is the word enough, because who gets to decide what the enough part is?
Yeah.
Is it each individual person? Is it each individual? Is it a family unit? And how impacted is it by like cultural norms and societal norms? And then when do we decide to break out of it? And when you break out of it, is it looked down upon? I mean, we're not going to solve this, obviously, because we have our own issues as women. But this idea that phrase being man enough is still used, maybe with the kids that we're raising, or in school, or how kids talk to each other. How does it slip in? It's that enough that I don't know if it bothers me, but it's like something that I wanted to keep bringing up. Like,
Yeah.
who gets to decide what that word? What is that? What's the enough part? Is it like a husband, father, provider, protector? Is it like this stereotypical sort of thing, or what do you, when you look at that phrase, like does that stand out to you, or is it just something that you've heard enough that you're like, it's just part of my life and my vernacular? Either of you.
It seems, and I mean, of course, I have my view of what a man was growing up, but as over the years, especially as I got more involved in this field, I began to realize and notice that just like many other things in life, there's a bit of a spectrum. And in that spectrum, there can be so many different views from society and the general public of what a man is. On one end, you could be a machista. On the other end, you can be completely off from that. So um, it's just I would see it as a spectrum nowadays.
Is there anything you want to add to
Yeah,
that?
and I totally agree. Kind of like what the point that you were saying right now is who gets to decide that you're going to be enough,
Mm-hmm.
right? That you're this man, and that you are enough, right? Like who gets to decide that? So I think that you know that when we allow ourselves to kind of get molded or dictated by the outside environment, I think we really limit ourselves. So I think that definitely, I think that as long as we know, that you're fulfilling, you're happy, you gotta know that for sure you're more than enough.
Okay, so with that, then let's jump to what we were told, because I was told things too, like what my expectations were supposed to be when it came to men. So, what were you told? Maybe, and you've already kind of defined how you feel about it now, so you don't have to like talk about the shift necessarily. But what are just like a couple of things that you were told that stand out even now, whether they're right or wrong, that you were told about, what being a man is? Julian.
Men don't cry.
Right.
Men don't cry. I think that is something that I was told multiple times. Men don't cry, and even at a very young age. And I think that it is something that I talk even with our young boys when I meet with clients, that I let them know, hey, it's okay. It's okay to cry. You're not going to be judged. You're not going to be made fun of because you're crying. You're not going to be called the baby, you know? And it's giving them the opportunity that, hey, it's okay to have feelings. It's okay to have these emotions that you have. This is your body telling you, hey, there's something going on, right? And so I think that crying was something that was looked as very negative when you saw a man cry, or even when you see a grown man crying, everybody's like in awe, like why, right?
Mhm.
And so we surrounded by this negative viewing of what that men shouldn't cry. But I think that that's something that we're changing, you know, allowing young men and boys to understand, hey, it's okay. We all do. We all have these feelings. We go through these difficult moments, and it's okay to cry. It's okay to let it out, right? So I think that that's maybe that was one big one that was try to be that was instilled a lot in me, for sure.
Okay, so can I press a little bit and ask? You don't have to answer if you don't want. Do you remember growing up seeing any grown men cry around you? Do you
Uh, I didn't. I didn't. My I think that my dad was always in and out. He was always in and out of our home, and he was an alcoholic, and again he was into a lot of substance use. He was also incarcerated in and out, and I want to say that maybe majority of the time that I did see him cry must have been only when he was under the influence.
Mm,
Might have been the only time that I saw him, or when he was either high or he just wasn't in all of his senses, that I think that that was maybe when I saw him crying. But aside of that, to see him express his feelings or emotions in a healthy way, it just wasn't there.
mhm.
It just wasn't there.
Yeah, except I'm just thinking about even for me, because I obviously if we're around any boys being raised, and we're in this kind of cultural environment, that does come up. I heard that whole thing about how boys don't cry growing up. So whenever we did go, if something happened, if someone died, if there was a funeral, and I did see men crying, it
Shocking.
seemed wrong. It was shocking. It was like like what I don't understand. So it made it harder, I think, for me, and I'm just speaking personally, to process like not only this death that we're experiencing in this emotional event, but also the fact that men are crying and they're not supposed to be crying.
Yeah.
They're not
We,
supposed to be crying,
yeah,
right?
we almost look at him, we see it, we're like, there's got to be something wrong with him,
Right.
that he's just not tough enough, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Horrible. It's
Yeah.
horrible. Okay, Marvin.
Well, personally, the biggest male role model in my life was my dad, and I would say still sort of is. Um, and my dad, being a father of six who migrated from Mexico and coming from extreme poverty, he modeled to me what some people would look at as or consider a traditional role, traditional roles of I'm sorry, traditional roles of a man, which was to be a provider to the family, a protector to the family, setting and enforcing rules. And one thing that I recall very clearly of my childhood is my dad's presence. All my siblings and I knew when my dad was home. He just had this presence of enforcement, this volume that took up space and energy in our home. Um, and that's sort of the idea I had growing up of what a man was is just someone who had a presence, almost like an alpha or something, an animal. Sort of when you see the and the wall, the lioness is taken down, and as soon as the lion comes in, you just know that the lion is there. Um, and but at the same time, it came with a combination of a softer side, which my dad was also a protector and a provider. So that was sort of the idea that I had growing up as a man is you must be big enough in life and have a presence, a volume, but also you still have that protective and provider side of you.
Mhm. So was there a sense then that you could have conversations about things, or was it just like everyone's still dealing with their own stuff on their own? Like what was that dynamic?
Well, the culture was to sort of deal with things on your own, you know.
Yeah,
You work through them, you fight through them, and that's sort of the mentality I had for a long period of time in life. Is just figuring things out by myself, just throwing yourself in there and not asking much for help, not bottling, repressing, suppressing all those emotions, and just keep pushing forward because you must continue to provide, you must continue to protect, whether it's yourself or those around you. Those were the core values and ideas I had growing up as being a man. Is that's my main role and duty is to keep surviving and thriving so I can be there for those around me. And that in itself, in return, would create some volume and presence in my identity.
And everything else needed to be suppressed because it was a distraction.
There was no time and space for that. It weakened and softened me. At least I felt that before, and it just didn't seem like it was ideal to spend so much time and energy in trying to feel and process emotions or talk about them. It would slow me down. So it was the concentration and focal point was on working through the pain, and so you can keep being that person that I was raised to be, which is provide and protect.
That's being a man. Okay, now you are both fathers, so we don't have to have a deep fatherhood conversation. But since we're all raising, I have one son, so I'm raising a boy. What do you tell your kids about this definition? Does it come up? Have they heard things outside of your home that they bring and ask questions about, or do you feel like mostly their ideas are coming from you? And I'm gonna start with Marvin on this one.
You say with Marvin?
Yeah.
Okay. So being a father of only one child, a 6-year-old daughter, it was tough to sort of the times I did bring up that topic to give advice. It's just the way I see it. It's just like I mentioned before. It's ever changing, ever evolving. So the main message I gave my child and just children around me in general is to keep an open mind of what a man is. From the time they first define manhood in life to the time either they themselves become a man or a significant man enters their life, such as an intimate partner, that definition or perception of a man can change in that time span. So it's why, to me, it's important for them to maintain an open mind of that shifting definition or paradigm of a man, because teaching, I don't know, let's say my daughter at age 10, what a man is, by the time a significant man enters her life at age 20 or 25, 10, 15 years had passed and a lot can change in those 10 or 15 years. And I would not want her to maintain that rigidity and mindset of what a man was 10, 15 years ago. By keeping an open mind, she can be more perceptive and open-minded to the new and evolving definition of a man by the time a man enters her life.
And what her expectations are and what she thinks she needs as she gets older also.
Yeah.
Okay. Julie.
Okay. I have a son, and I don't think I've had this discussion of having to define what a man is. One of the things that I do go over with all three of my kids is maybe finding what the expectation is going to be, right? Is what I tell my son and my daughters are: be a person of your word. Doesn't necessarily have to be connected to being a man. Being a person that's going to always take ownership. Again, it doesn't have to be attached to the word man. Be independent. Push yourself to thrive. It doesn't necessarily have to be connected to that definition of a man. And whenever you get an opportunity to help others, always stand up, right? Stand up, speak your mind, speak your word. Don't let anybody to put you in this box of, this is what the definition of a man, this is the type of man that you should find, but find someone that's going to support you, someone that's going to push you, someone that's going to challenge you, But, and the same thing that I tell my daughters is the same thing I tell my son. When you find a partner, don't rely that this person is the one that's going to take care of you, that they have to provide for you, but you equally you support each other. Equally, you're going to challenge each other. Equally, you're going to, you guys are going to strive for something better. Right. And I think that that's something that I've instilled in both my sons and my daughter, and not just kind of sticking to that rigidness of this is what a man should do.
Mm-hmm.
A man needs to provide. A man needs to protect you, and you just kind of stay at home. And no, this is what the expectation is, to move forward and to move into something better for sure.
So this is already a way different, away from that end of the spectrum in the way that I'm assuming that the three of us were raised. Because even though in my family there's two daughters, there's just my sister and I, we did have a lot of cousins who were boys, and it's very, Mexican culture, and there's a lot of machismo and all those things, and it's the don't cry, and these messages were being, so already I feel like just within this generation there's this shift in, we're talking about humans, we're talking about people, and there are roles to be played, but they can be played by any of us, right? Because we want to be successful if we choose a partner that we're successful in a relationship. So already it feels like we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
This generational trauma stops with us. Like I feel like we're learning lessons in a lot of ways, but that there are still people who maybe these roles work for them, but they don't necessarily need to be imposed as strictly or brutally in some cases as they have been in the past.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're learning, everybody. We're learning. Okay,
Yeah, sure.
so this is
I think it's easy. I think it's easy to come in and we can clearly just play the role, right? We can easily say, well, a man's going to be, my definition of a man has to be the provider. No matter what, has to be the one to provide. It's the one that's going to anchor the family. It's the one that's going to call the shots, is going to create the rules of the house. Again, it's the one that's, going to protect, it's going to provide, and, it's all his responsibility. And that's it. That's the end of it. We can simply just say, that's what it is. Right. But I think that the field is leveling out. And I think that that's kind of where we're a lot of us are kind of moving towards breaking away from that mentality and just leveling out the playing field. Right. We know that there's a lot of mothers that are out there as well that play that father figure role. Right. And they're it's not just the man that's a provider, but we know that there's, single mothers that are out there that are also providing and that are also working an 8-to-5 job, and, they're doing it as well. So, why is it that we just kind of see, well, it's the man's duty, right? But now we see that, we have two working parents and they're equally trying to push their family forward, and, they're moving together into one unit, which is awesome to kind of see.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything to add, Marvin, before I move
on? No, I mean, I totally agree that it seems like there's a major shift in society and how manhood is being viewed and treated as. But of course, definitely there's, depending on the regions too, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. I believe that those cliche or stereotypical definitions or roles of a manhood are still practiced because they still serve a function in certain parts of the world, and maybe related to religious or cultural practices. But nonetheless, there does seem to be a significant shift on how manhood is being viewed as by society.
Mm-hmm. So that actually will segue perfectly into this next part, because we're talking about the role of this idea of man enough, maybe in a family unit and maybe with fatherhood. But there is also an impact on relationships across the board. So, for example, in the way that you're describing your ideas, the way that you define it, the way you're raising your kids, the way you work as counselors, therapists, specialists in your field, how does that impact your relationships with other people maybe outside the home, this like personal, professional relationships? Marvin.
Okay. So
There's only two of you. So.
yeah, no, I'm down.
And
So I guess because like me personally, I went through a lot of radical changes in life. Um, Being raised in Christianity, believing in headship at an early young age, to being in street gangs and which entailed of a lot of machismo, to being a father, to being a laborer and provider, to now being a therapist who practices egalitarian. Um, I experienced a lot of ambivalence and internal conflicts, and I still do. At times, I feel that I can be very open, very soft, gentle, okay with asking for help, even okay with crying and being in touch with my emotions. But at other times, I find myself to feel that cliche manliness creeping in, and I begin to shut down and close up. And that's where I can start feeling how it impacts personal relationships and also even professional relationships. It's where I remind myself and have to self-regulate that it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to be scared, it's okay to be want to be nurtured and loved, and that I am still man. I am the man I've always been, and I'm still man enough, I guess. But it's created an internal conflict, considering that I got to be part of and am part of both sides of the spectrum of manliness.
So it's interesting what you said about it creeps in, like you're being reminded somewhere, like, hey, you're a man, and then you shut down.
Well, depending on the person's experience and me personally, to mold me into that man that I once, that cliche man that I once was,
Right.
it could have been traumatic. It entailed of traumatic experiences such as overworking and burning out and suppressing emotions, and therefore it can almost be viewed as a trauma response to be triggered by certain things. For instance, me working in an office right now. I can see or hear a comment of someone saying like, "Oh, you're not a man if you work in an office. Only men work out in the field," or something like that. So something as simple as that can start lingering a little voice and start telling me like, make me think and convince myself that maybe I'm not doing enough as a man right now.
Right.
And that's where I start, feeling those ideas start creeping in, and that's where I have to remind myself and regulate those emotions.
That makes sense. Julian? Yeah, you're muted. Hang on.
I was rereading the question again. How does the idea of a man impact my relationships? Man, let me think about this one. I would like to think that a lot of my past experiences have led me to become who I am, where I'm not so easily influenced or impacted by other people's ideas or thoughts. I don't know if that kind of makes sense. I think that growing up, there was just a lot of negativity that was poured into me. There was just a lot of rigidness way of thinking. And, and I think that my life was just kind of spiraling out of control at some point where I had to do things differently. I didn't have a parent that was going to motivate me or push me or even give me the idea that there was something better out there, right? It was something that I think that I had to push within myself, that hey, there's a better life. There's a better life than just drugs. There's a better life than just gangs. There's a better life than just incarceration. I had uncles that had gone to prison. I had my mother who was in prison for 17 years. I had my dad who was in prison. I had everybody around me that's kind of what the lifestyle was. And to me, growing up, my mother told me that I was worthless, that I wasn't going to mount up. A lot of times she told me, "Hey, I wish you were a girl."
Hmm.
And that affected me, growing up. And that's why I said growing up, it gave me that sense of, why I need to be a man. Men don't cry, men are tough, and I'm going to show everybody, and I got into dangerous stuff, where I was, even at a young age, I was taking knives to school, and I was engaging in this very destructive behavior where I was stealing cars at a young age, and I was hanging around with gang members and stuff until I got incarcerated. And so I was heading down this path that there was no living. There was going to be no life. And I think that something had to change in me. Something had to go around. And I think that seeing how far I've come, I think that it's giving me proof that, hey, I'm doing something right. I can't turn back, and this is where I'm at, right? This is where I'm at. And so when we go back to the same question, going, what's going to be enough? I know, I've made enough change to impact my kids, the next generation that comes next, and I think that that's what gives me the sense of fullness of being enough.
Awesome. I want to ask. I asked this last week. We were talking about fatherhood because I want to know if there are ways that men communicate with each other about these kinds of issues, thoughts, this process. Um, I think especially coming from YouTube, like this is your thing, right? You're supposed to be talking about you're providing these services to other people. And the answer, hands down, was no. We don't talk about these things. It may come up, someone might have an issue, and we deal with it, and then we move on. There's no like, and I don't know if that's a gendered thing. Women talk about stuff all the time. At least my friends and I do. So I don't know if this is like, do you find yourself going to other men, like friends that you have, and bringing any of this stuff up ever?
Yeah.
Okay.
So going back again, I like to surround myself with people that are just in the same mindset. I think it's what has to be. I dislike surrounding myself with people that are going to be negative, that people that are not going to motivate you, that people are not going to challenge or even question you, right? I like to sit around with people where I can be raw, where I can sit down and either call them out or they can call me out and be like, nope, that's not okay. And I have to realize, you know what? Yeah, I was wrong. I shouldn't have done things that way, right? And I think that even with my best friend that I have of 28 years, we've known each other since high school. If I see that he's doing something, I'll call him out. Hey, dude, why did you react that way with your fiance, or why did you react that way with your daughter? Like, why did you have to do that, right? And again, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna call you out. I'm gonna call you out. Like, why? And we sit down and we'll have a discussion. We'll discuss. Just remember how you were raised by your parents,
Mhm.
right? And just to kind of give a little perspective, he's Asian, right? And their culture is going to be different. And yeah, of course, I'm gonna take that in consideration. But just sitting down with people that are going to call you out, and they're going to call me out. And I think that it's you have to be open and raw with somebody that you can open up to, and they can open up to you, right? And I think that that's just kind of what, you know, it's a sharp sword just sharpening, iron sharpens iron, and that's what it comes down to. But I think that if we're too afraid, our sword is just going to get dull.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark.
Well, I guess I'm still in somewhat of a liminal phase of the old life and new life
Mm.
in a sense. So I still interact with those from my childhood and those from the old ways of considering manhood. And I can see a significant difference in how they communicate it versus how others communicate or how I communicate. And there is definitely a uh, major reduction on the amount of words that are used in general. Um, with some male friends that I interact with that are still of that older mentality or that past mentality, communicate with simple words as in "I'm okay, I'm cool, I'll be all right," or I think the funniest one, it's sending memes or songs where you can get a lot of information from that meme and
Yeah.
or from that song, just the lyrics itself when they play it on their social media or something. It almost describes their exact current state of mind or emotions. And a lot of the times I've noticed that that is a way that they communicate very subliminally
Mm-hmm.
versus those that are more associated, more enlightened, um, or had the opportunity or chance to be able to work on themselves. They definitely are able to be more insightful of their own emotions and be able to communicate that verbally and clearly. Um, but yeah, there's definitely a huge spectrum of level of communication based on their definition of manliness.
I think we also need to appreciate the fact that it's better than saying nothing to get memes and check this out. This video. If
Yeah.
you can set, if they stop sending you messages, something's wrong. Something's wrong, right? Like that is like a form of. I think we all do it, but if
Yeah.
someone, if that's their only way of saying I'm okay or I'm not okay, then it's better than being quiet, for sure.
Yeah.
We do have a comment from YouTube. Someone asked, Julian, you can answer as much as you want. What made you change your life? Someone wanted to know.
What made me change my life to now?
Yeah, what was that turning point, I guess?
Um, I want to say that faith kind of made a big impact in me. Um, I was definitely at the lowest of the low. I was sleeping at a park,
Mm,
and I think that while I was staying at this park, my just everything just kind of came back. There were many a times where we would drive down the street, and I saw my father just out on the street. He was just sleeping. Either he was high or he was staying homeless at a park for days on end. We wouldn't see him for weeks. We wouldn't see him for weeks, and a lot of times we would drive by a homeless guy, and my mom would say, "Look, there's your dad right there. That's your dad right there. Look, right there. That's what you're gonna become right there." And I think that when I aged out of foster care, I was staying at a park, and I want to say that that's kind of where I hit rock bottom, where I was eating out of a trash can. I was trying to find places, to stay, and I think that faith is kind of what made a big impact in me, and it just kind of everything just kind of changed where I had to make a decision. What do I want in life? And I wanted a family. It was something that I hadn't experienced. I wanted to have a wife. I wanted to have a kids. I wanted to experience what it was like to have a loving home. And I was willing to do whatever it took. Right. And, from the very first moment I became a father, everything just kind of changed for me. And I had to do something different, you know. My kids will never experience what I experienced growing up. My kids would never see the stuff that I had to see. I had to grow up pretty quickly. I was in foster home after foster home, physical abuse, verbal abuse. I had experienced it all, and so yeah, the moment that I got married and I had my first kid, everything just kind of changed, and I was willing to do whatever it took to provide the best and loving home for them.
Mhm. I guess all of those things, you would have to go through all those things and come out understanding that that definition of like man enough doesn't really mean anything if you don't have all of the things that you're talking about that you wanted.
Yeah.
Those definitions don't mean anything.
Yep. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything that you'd like to add before we sign off, or we're about 45 minutes in?
Well, I just want to say thank you for everybody that was here or whoever was listening. Just kind of appreciate you guys, and continue to support Letty, on her journey with this, and we just really appreciate having us on the show for sure.
Yeah,
Thanks,
tagging along to what Julian said. Definitely. Is she froze? Oh. Definitely. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here, be able to talk and share a little bit about our own personal experiences and insight on manhood. I think it's a very important topic and very timely. So thank you for that.
Seriously, thank you guys for jumping in, because I know these are not easy conversations, and before the month started, I'm going to tell you, before the month started, it was like, why are you talking about those things? Why did you decide that those things were nice? And I talked to people about it, and these were the topics that they were like, yes, that's a good one to talk about. That's a good one to talk about. And I would say, well, do you want to come on and talk about it? No.
Oh, wow.
Those are great topics. I don't want to talk about it. So I think this is why we need to talk about it.
If you had called us at the beginning of the month, we would have been, yeah, we'll do it.
It's important. It's
Yeah,
important.
definitely, for sure.
And it's important to keep talking about these things. Obviously, all of our mental health is important year round. We're just doing this in June because it happens to be Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. I mean, it's Pride Month too, but it's also Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And we can dive deeper into I mean, I don't want to bum us out at the end, but the suicide rates, mental health diagnosis, lack of resources. We're across the board. These things need to be more available to our young boys, our young men, and then of course the adults that are, helping shape future generations. So
For sure.
obviously, we need each other. So we need to be able to have these conversations. And thank you to, we've got some comments. You guys did a great job. And then thank you for sharing your perspective. And then someone said, as a female, this is helpful insight. See, we're helping each other. Helping each other.
Nice.
All right. So thank you too for coming on. Then, I will keep you guys posted for other things. I definitely want to have you come back. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for watching. And you guys hang on for just a bit as I close out. And we'll see you next week. We're going to be talking about aging, which of course nobody wants to talk about, but everybody wants to talk about. So happens to everybody. Okay, so see you next week, everybody.